Part 2, The Complete Truth. You made it. You sat through the first half of the most controversial television debate on the internet. And now you're back for more. That tells me something about you. It tells me you're not satisfied with easy answers. You want the full picture. You want to understand why these shows matter, not just which one is better. So let's finish this. In Part 1, we established that Breaking Bad succeeded where Game of Thrones failed. It maintained its focus, it honored its characters, and it delivered an ending that felt inevitable and earned. But we left a massive question hanging in the air. I said there was a third show. A show that combines the scope of Game of Thrones with the psychological depth of Breaking Bad. A show that might actually be better than both of them. And you're probably thinking, what show? There's no show that can match both of those giants. But there is. And it's the show that made both of them possible in the first place. It's The Sopranos. Now, before you click away because you've heard this comparison a million times, hear me out. Because I'm not going to tell you that The Sopranos is the greatest show ever made. That's been said too many times. What I'm going to show you is something much more interesting, how The Sopranos secretly contains the DNA of both Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones, and why understanding that connection changes everything you thought you knew about television. So let's travel back in time. To 1999. To a world where prestige television barely existed. Where HBO was a premium channel that showed movies and boxing matches. Where no one thought a mob drama about a depressed gangster in therapy could become a cultural phenomenon. And then David Chase created Tony Soprano. And everything changed. Tony Soprano is the missing link between Walter White and the entire cast of Game of Thrones. Think about it. Tony is a criminal, a murderer, a philanderer, and a deeply flawed human being. But he's also a man who struggles with anxiety, depression, and the crushing weight of his own legacy. He goes to therapy. He loves his children. He tries, in his own broken way, to be a good man. Sound familiar? Walter White also starts as a decent man who slowly becomes a monster. But Walter's journey is a linear descent. He starts good and ends evil. Tony Soprano is both good and evil at the same time, from the very first episode. He's not becoming a monster, he's already a monster trying to figure out why he can't sleep at night. That's a much more complex, much more human portrait. And that's why The Sopranos is the foundation upon which both Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones were built. Without Tony Soprano, there is no Walter White. Without the moral ambiguity of the New Jersey mob, there's no moral ambiguity of the Lannisters and the Starks. David Chase proved that audiences would watch a show where the protagonist is a terrible person, and still root for him. That lesson was absorbed by every showrunner who came after. But here's the thing, The Sopranos didn't have to choose between intimate character study and epic world building. It created its own world, the world of organized crime, of suburban New Jersey, of Italian-American identity, and it explored that world with the same granular detail that Game of Thrones used to explore Westeros. It just did it on a smaller physical scale. But emotionally, the scope was just as vast. Because Tony's world includes his mother, his uncle, his wife, his children, his business associates, his therapists, and his many, many mistresses. Each relationship is a battlefield. Each conversation is a power struggle. It's as political as anything in King's Landing, but the weapons are words and the consequences are often fatal. So why am I bringing up The Sopranos in a comparison between Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones? Because I want to give you a new lens to see both shows. But he's also a man who struggles with anxiety, depression, and the crushing weight of his own legacy. He goes to therapy. He loves his children. He tries, in his own broken way, to be a good man. Sound familiar? Walter White also starts as a decent man who slowly becomes a monster. But Walter's journey is a linear descent. He starts good and ends evil. Tony Soprano is both good and evil at the same time, from the very first episode. He's not becoming a monster, he's already a monster trying to figure out why he can't sleep at night. That's a much more complex, much more human portrait. And that's why The Sopranos is the foundation upon which both Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones were built. Without Tony Soprano, there is no Walter White. Without the moral ambiguity of the New Jersey mob, there's no moral ambiguity of the Lannisters and the Starks. David Chase proved that audiences would watch a show where the protagonist is a terrible person, and still root for him. That lesson was absorbed by every showrunner who came after. But here's the thing, The Sopranos didn't have to choose between intimate character study and epic world building. It created its own world, the world of organized crime, of suburban New Jersey, of Italian-American identity, and it explored that world with the same granular detail that Game of Thrones used to explore Westeros. It just did it on a smaller physical scale. But emotionally, the scope was just as vast. Because Tony's world includes his mother, his uncle, his wife, his children, his business associates, his therapists, and his many, many mistresses. Each relationship is a battlefield. Each conversation is a power struggle. It's as political as anything in King's Landing, but the weapons are words and the consequences are often fatal. So why am I bringing up The Sopranos in a comparison between Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones? Because I want to give you a new lens to see both shows. But he's also a man who struggles with anxiety, depression, and the crushing weight of his own legacy. He goes to therapy. He loves his children. He tries, in his own broken way, to be a good man. Sound familiar? Walter White also starts as a decent man who slowly becomes a monster. But Walter's journey is a linear descent. He starts good and ends evil. Tony Soprano is both good and evil at the same time, from the very first episode. He's not becoming a monster, he's already a monster trying to figure out why he can't sleep at night. That's a much more complex, much more human portrait. And that's why The Sopranos is the foundation upon which both Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones were built. Without Tony Soprano, there is no Walter White. Without the moral ambiguity of the New Jersey mob, there's no moral ambiguity of the Lannisters and the Starks. David Chase proved that audiences would watch a show where the protagonist is a terrible person, and still root for him. That lesson was absorbed by every showrunner who came after. But here's the thing, The Sopranos didn't have to choose between intimate character study and epic world building. It created its own world, the world of organized crime, of suburban New Jersey, of Italian-American identity, and it explored that world with the same granular detail that Game of Thrones used to explore Westeros. It just did it on a smaller physical scale. But emotionally, the scope was just as vast. Because Tony's world includes his mother, his uncle, his wife, his children, his business associates, his therapists, and his many, many mistresses. Each relationship is a battlefield. Each conversation is a power struggle. It's as political as anything in King's Landing, but the weapons are words and the consequences are often fatal. So why am I bringing up The Sopranos in a comparison between Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones? Because I want to give you a new lens to see both shows. She becomes the villain because the plot demands it, not because her psychology justifies it. Cersei is cunning and ruthless, but her motivations are reduced to she loves her children and she's been underestimated. Arya becomes a super soldier with no real emotional core by the end. Sansa learns politics, but her growth often feels unearned because it happens off-screen. Now look at Breaking Bad's women. Skylar White is one of the most misunderstood characters in television history. She's not a hero. She's not a villain. She's a woman trapped in a marriage to a monster, trying to protect her children while slowly realizing that she's complicit in her husband's crimes. Her arc is subtle, messy, and deeply human. She's not a warrior queen. She's not a scheming queen. She's just a woman trying to survive. And that's more compelling than any dragon rider. Then there's Marie Schrader, the irritating sister who hides her pain behind purple and shoplifting. She's annoying, sure, but she's also deeply loyal. She cares for Hank when he's paralyzed. She stands by Skylar even when she doesn't understand what's happening. She's a flawed human being, not an archetype. And what about Jane? She's an addict who dies not in a blaze of glory, but in a quiet, horrible moment that could have been prevented. Her death isn't shocking for the sake of shock, it's shocking because of the moral choice Walt makes. It's about him, not her. That's the difference. In Breaking Bad, women are characters, not plot devices. In Game of Thrones, especially in the later seasons, women often become vehicles for the plot to move forward. I'm not saying Game of Thrones is sexist. I'm saying it lost sight of its characters' internal lives. And when you lose sight of the internal, all you have left is the external. And the external, no matter how spectacular, is ultimately hollow. Let's talk about something that nobody ever mentions in these debates, the cinematography. Breaking Bad is one of the most visually stunning shows ever made. The desert landscapes, the close-ups of chemical reactions, the use of color to convey emotion, it's all painstakingly crafted. There's a scene in season 2 where Walt and Jesse are cooking in the desert, and the camera holds on a single blue crystal. It glistens. It's beautiful. And yet we know it's poison. That's the genius of Breaking Bad's visual language, it makes you see the beauty in destruction. Game of Thrones also had incredible cinematography. The sweeping shots of the wall, the aerial views of King's Landing, the fiery battles, it was all epic. But here's the difference, Game of Thrones often used visuals for spectacle, not for meaning. The dragons were impressive, but they didn't symbolize anything deeper than weapons of mass destruction. The White Walkers were terrifying, but they were never fully developed as metaphors. They were just ice zombies. In Breaking Bad, every image is loaded with symbolism. The pink teddy bear. The eye floating in the pool. The fly. The pizza on the roof. The chemistry set. The final shot of Walt in the lab, touching the equipment one last time. These images aren't just beautiful, they're meaningful. They're designed to stay with you, to invite interpretation, to make you think. And that's the thing about art, the best art rewards repeated viewing. You can watch Breaking Bad 5 times and notice something new each time. You can watch Game of Thrones 5 times and you'll just be reminded of how disappointing the ending was. But wait, let me stop right there. Because I'm about to say something that might make you angry. Something that might make you feel like I'm being unfair. Game of Thrones wasn't supposed to be Breaking Bad. It was supposed to be Game of Thrones. And for what it was, a sprawling fantasy epic with political intrigue, shocking deaths, and dragons, it was brilliant. The first 4 seasons are some of the best television ever produced. The acting, the writing, the production design, it was all top tier. And I would never take that away from it. But the show failed to stick the landing. And in the world of long-form storytelling, the ending is everything. It's the final chord of a symphony. It's the last page of a novel. It's the thing that determines whether the journey was worth taking. And Game of Thrones' journey, for all its highs, ended in a way that retroactively diminished what came before. When you watch The Red Wedding now, knowing that the show will eventually become a race to the finish line, does it feel as powerful? When you watch Daenerys hatch her dragons, knowing she'll become a genocidal maniac in the span of 1 episode, do you feel the same hope? When you watch Jon Snow's resurrection, knowing he'll basically do nothing of consequence in the final season, does the miracle feel cheap? That's the tragedy of Game of Thrones. It wasn't just a bad ending. It was an ending that poisoned the entire show. And that's a fate worse than being bad from the start. Breaking Bad, on the other hand, gets better on rewatch. You see the foreshadowing. You see the subtle hints of Walt's transformation. You see the moral compromises that lead to the inevitable tragedy. And when you reach the finale, you feel a sense of closure, of completion, of purpose. You don't feel cheated. You feel grateful. So if we're judging these shows on the full arc, on the complete story, Breaking Bad wins. It's not even close. But let me take you one step further. Because I promised you that The Sopranos would enter the conversation, and now it's time to deliver. The Sopranos had an ending that was even more controversial than Game of Thrones. The screen went black. The audience sat in stunned silence. Was it a cheat? Was it genius? For years, people argued about it. And the show's creator, David Chase, never gave a clear answer. He left it ambiguous. He left it open. And that, in a strange way, is more respectful to the audience than what Game of Thrones did. Because an ambiguous ending invites you to think, to interpret, to engage. A bad ending just makes you feel stupid for caring. But here's the deeper truth, The Sopranos ending was actually perfect. Because the show was never about Tony's death. It was about his life. The final scene wasn't a cliffhanger, it was a statement. Life goes on. The threats are always there. You never know when it will end. You just have to keep living. That's the same philosophy that underpins Breaking Bad. Walt's death is inevitable from the first episode. The show isn't about whether he'll die, it's about who he'll become before he does. And that's what makes it so powerful. Game of Thrones tried to do the same thing. It wanted to show that the fight for the throne was meaningless in the face of death, the White Walkers. But then it forgot that message and turned into a competition for who would sit on the Iron Throne anyway. It lost its own theme. It betrayed its own soul. So where does that leave us? Which show is truly the best? Let me give you a framework. If you want a show that feels like a novel, that rewards deep analysis, that makes you think about morality and choice and identity, you watch Breaking Bad. If you want a show that feels like a blockbuster movie, that sweeps you up in a world of spectacle and drama, that gives you moments you'll never forget, you watch Game of Thrones. And if you want the show that combines both, the psychological depth of Breaking Bad and the epic scope of Game of Thrones, you watch The Sopranos. But you also watch The Wire. And Mad Men. And Deadwood. And The Leftovers. Because television is a rich medium, and there are many masterpieces. But if I had to choose one? If I had to pick the show that matters most, not just to me, but to the history of the medium? It's Breaking Bad. Not because it's flawless, it has its flaws. The second season drags. Some characters are underused. But it's the most complete, most coherent, most emotionally devastating story ever told on the small screen. And here's why it matters, because Breaking Bad is a story about you. It's about the choices you make when no one is watching. It's about the excuses you tell yourself to justify your own bad behavior. It's about the person you might become if you stopped caring about the consequences. It's a warning. It's a mirror. It's a confession. Walter White is not a monster. He's a man who made one bad choice and then kept making them until he couldn't recognize himself. And that's what makes him terrifying, not because he's evil, but because he's human. Because he could be any of us. And that's why Breaking Bad will outlast Game of Thrones. Because Game of Thrones is about a world that doesn't exist. Breaking Bad is about a world that does. It's about the darkness that lives in every heart, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge. So when you ask me which show is better, I don't answer with Breaking Bad because of the cinematography, or the acting, or the writing, or the ending. I answer with Breaking Bad because of what it says about being human. Because it doesn't just entertain you. It changes you. Game of Thrones gave us dragons. Breaking Bad gave us ourselves. And that's the real reason it wins. But let me leave you with one final thought. Something that I've been thinking about for a long time. Something that might make you see both shows differently. Every story is a reflection of its time. Game of Thrones came out during the Obama era, a time of hope and change, but also a time of political cynicism. The show reflected that cynicism. It said, power is corrupt. No one is good. The world is a brutal place. Breaking Bad came out during the same period, but it said something different. It said, the world is brutal, but the real battle is inside you. You are the enemy you're fighting. You are the one you need to fear. And that, to me, is the more profound statement. Because we can't change the world. We can't change politics. We can't change other people. But we can change ourselves. We can choose to be better, even when it's easier to be worse. We can resist the temptation to rationalize our own darkness. That's the lesson of Breaking Bad. And that's why, when I look back at these shows years from now, I'll remember Walter White more than I'll remember Jon Snow. I'll remember Skylar more than I'll remember Cersei. I'll remember the Blue Crystal more than I'll remember the Iron Throne. Because one of them is real. And the other is just a story. So thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with me through this long, winding journey. If you've made it this far, you're not a casual viewer. You're someone who cares about stories. Who cares about what they mean and why they matter. And that's a rare thing in this world. If you want to continue this conversation, subscribe to this channel. Because we're not done exploring the depths of television. There's so much more to discover. So many shows that deserve this kind of attention. And I want to share them with you. One last thing before I go. Game of Thrones ended with a council choosing a king. Breaking Bad ended with a man lying on the floor of a meth lab, a single tear rolling down his cheek, a faint smile on his lips. That smile wasn't happiness. It wasn't victory. It was peace. The peace that comes from finally accepting who you are. That's the ending we all deserve. Not a throne. Not a crown. But a moment of clarity. A moment of truth. And that's why Breaking Bad is the greatest show ever made. Because in the end, it's not about winning. It's about knowing. Goodbye. And see you in the next one.